Welcome to BCN's new series, What's Happening Now, a collection of informational and hopefully entertaining programming where we speak substantively to interesting and important people. And today we're honored to have Diane Rufino, who shall give us her perspective on what she sees going on in the world. And let me tell you a little bit about Diane. Diane Rufino has a law degree. She studied contract law, and she studied constitutional law, and she understands the Constitution, Bill of Rights, frontwards and backwards. Whenever I need a question answered, as I govern as a county commissioner, I try to ring up Diane and find out what her take is. And she's very helpful. And one of the things I hear, Diane, is a lot of politicians in this area use you as a resource, which I think is wonderful because I think it helps us all. We have our understandings about what's happening in our own area and how we can best fit what is real and what is right and how we should govern properly. But you help us stay in line by giving us your perspective on a document that we, all politicians, are sworn to defend.
Mm-hmm. Uphold and defend, yeah.
And I've had to do it 6 times, and it means something every time I swear to defend the Constitution. And I try to govern that way. And I think our best government leaders do that as well. What we have seen in America today is wilding in the streets. There are groups of people who think they are doing something good, honorable, and right, and yet they don't know exactly why they're doing it. They don't know why they're there. They just want to be part of the party.
Yep.
You see it that way as well?
Yeah, I see them making things up as they go, and it's very frustrating to me. So I don't watch news. I haven't watched news in weeks because I just think things are upside down now.
It depresses my wife.
Yeah. It depresses me, and it just, I feel like it's just a waste of my time to watch the news, to see people so out of touch with our Constitution and our republic, and then to find out that you have politicians that are actually standing up for these borderline criminals in the protests, and that makes no sense to me. And Stan, you hit it on the head. I understand the Constitution the way it was written and ratified and explained and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. So I think today we should still be looking at the Constitution the way it was ratified and what it meant back then. That's what talking about a Constitution that memorializes what the states wanted back then. Now, if you want to change it, you could take the Democrats' view, which it's a living, breathing document. You want to update it as the times go. Well, it's a living, breathing document, so they can interpret as the times would dictate. And we all know that. I have a mortgage. Can I go and renegotiate it every couple of years? No, I can't. The terms are clear. The mortgage was back in 2001. I can't go back and renegotiate. But that's the beauty of a Constitution. It memorializes. It
does memorialize it. You could go back and renegotiate your mortgage, providing the other party agrees to such.
Exactly.
The other party agreeing to such in the Constitution is quite an arduous task, is it not?
It is.
Would you explain that task for our public? Because a lot of folks say, well, we need to stop this, we need to stop that, we need to do this differently, we need to stop the way we elect the president. Mm-hmm. This whole electoral college is wrong. Yeah. Mm-hmm. However, to change the electoral college would be quite a process. Would you explain that process?
Yeah. So our country, our first union was held together by the Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation was pretty interesting because all it was one body. It was a congressional body. They met and they passed laws and that kind of stuff. But James Madison and some others.
Alexander Hamilton
and some others.
John Jay?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But in Virginia, they got together and they rewrote a Constitution, right? They rewrote it and they brought it to Philadelphia when they met in Philadelphia to amend the Articles to overcome any defects. right? So that was their call. It was very clear. It was the Lee Amendment or whatever it was, but it was very clear. And that thing went out to all the states, and it set the time and date and the location for the convention. So they get to Philadelphia, and the very first day they're looking at this, and they're like, wait, we can't do this. This is a brand new form of government, right? And our call was just to amend the Articles of Confederation. So they were saying, well, we got to leave. We can't be part of this, blah, 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 blah. But for some reason, and I really should go back and read all the debates in the Philadelphia Convention. But they overcome that, and they end up debating some of the things in that Virginia plan or whatever it was, made a lot of sense. It made sense to the larger states. It didn't make a lot of sense to the smaller states. So,
like Delaware.
Yeah, Delaware, New Jersey, and Rhode Island, all those small states. And luckily, what won the day over wasn't pounding and blah blah blah. It was debate and whatever made sense. So when I used to teach a history class, and we would do something similar to what the Philadelphia Convention did. So on the board, I put a bunch of issues, and I'd say, all right, your assignment tonight is to pick 6 of these issues, and then first of all, put your position down on that. And second, what do you think the government should do about it? And third, does the government even have the authority to deal with the issue? All right. It was just a place for me to understand what their overall knowledge is. And the people in my class were like juniors and seniors. All right. So they'd come back the next day, and everybody had picked their issues. And I picked issues that were stuff the government would rule on. They have the authority, it's right in the Constitution, and stuff that they don't have any authority. So, but everybody in my class every year picked these issues, and they all were issues that the government has to fix.
What was one of those issues? Was the Electoral College one of those issues? Fixing that, so to speak?
No. Mm-mm.
But it would be. They could fix it, but they'd have to fix it through a process.
Right.
The process would begin in the House of Representatives, would it not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that process.
What is that? What is that process?
It's called the amendment process. So. Yeah, they would come up with language to amend the Constitution or amend anything, right? Then it has to go to the Senate. The Senate has to approve it by the very same language. If that's approved, it's a bill. It's
how many votes do you get? It's not a simple majority once it goes to the House and the Senate, is it?
I think it is. I think it's a simple majority. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the Constitution for that.
66%, 2/3.
Right, so 2/3.
2/3.
Then after that, it goes to the states. Now the states have to look at it and see if the language is okay, right? And every state, so they have to pass it by, I think, 3/4.
Yes.
Right?
3/4. Now that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah. So, and our states, if you're following things, our states are really kind of different from each other. You have the liberal states and the conservative states, but each state has to pass that very same language. If they do, and they get the magic number, the number is 67%, 68, whatever it is. If they get that number, then that amendment passes.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if I'm getting the numbers right, but let's forget I'm not a math major. All right. But if they don't, if the states don't agree on that language, then it doesn't pass.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how that would have to go down. But right now, everybody realizes the Democratic states don't like the Electoral College.
No, and the more conservative / Republican / red states do like it.
Yeah, well, it makes sense.
Because we're more agrarian, we're more spread out, and we own property.
Yeah, well, that's not the reason they put that Electoral College in, but it was more like to give meaning to the Constitution and to the Union, right? So it's a federal union, meaning that the government in D.C. is one that manages over all the states and is their arbiter, right? But they want to make sure that they represent all the states equally. They can't pick favorites. They can't promote one state's interests more than other states. So they have to, they got to make sure everything is regular, right? So, commerce, make sure it's regular, everything regular. Each state would have to have a, militia. So let's call up a national Navy, Army, all that kind of stuff. So,
the militia, you mentioned militia, and we've seen a lot about the National Guard lately.
Yeah.
The president calling up the National Guard and trying to foist that upon certain states to go ahead and do it, pushing certain governors that would never do it.
Right?
Those same governors whose cities are actually burning.
Yeah, they're Democrats.
Because of the lawlessness. Mm-hmm. And I guess they figure that's their voting constituency out there doing the looting and the burning and whatever. They don't want to stop them. That's their neighborhoods, right?
That's their, If they
and the president sees that your cities are burning, you need to do something. Why don't you use the National Guard? Now, the governor those governors can always call the National Guard up whenever they want without the president's permission, can they not?
They can call it their state.
Yes.
National Guard. Right?
Their state National Guard.
Yeah. So they can't call National Guard from other states.
No, they can't.
They could probably request maybe, but they can't do that.
And this president has made it known that he is in favor of law and order.
Yeah.
And he will do whatever he can to help out.
Yeah.
As per the Constitution.
Yeah. So his position is that the people are suffering because we all see these pictures of Portland and all the Milwaukee and Chicago, and the places are burning, and it looks terrible. It almost looks like Fallujah. It almost looks like the Mideast or wherever we were in. And he thinks that the people don't really want that. No one wants to live like that. So the people, you can't have a governor or a mayor. You can't have one person making these decisions for all the people. And so he would send in the National Guard. That's his position, I believe. And I don't know who the mayor of Chicago is, but she's
Mayor Lightfoot.
Lightfoot, that's it. Mayor Lightfoot, who's probably not much taller than I am.
No.
But
she is light of foot.
Yeah, and
in a variety of ways.
And you've seen her wife, right? So
no, I haven't met her. And she is married. She's,
so and I can't make it out, and I don't want to try to. But yes, so Lightfoot is a short woman, and then she's married to a woman who's much taller and thinner. I think it's a woman, right? I think.
Yes.
Okay.
I can't believe we're having this. 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
And I don't want to go any further than that. But sometimes she says, "I would welcome the National Guard," and then no, I don't. She's back and forth on it. I don't know where she stands today. I think she'd rather not have.
So it probably depends on who she spoke to last.
Yeah, but that's where that is right now. I know the president is trying to have law and order around the country.
One of the things, since we're talking about mayors, and I'm a local government guy, I understand how the commissioners work in North Carolina. I don't know how the supervisors or commissioners work in other counties totally. I mean, we all have our own state laws, and we're a body politic of the state of North Carolina, so we're governed by general statute, right? So corporate municipalities also are governed by general statute. And I understand how it works in North Carolina with the, I think it's called the city manager government. And the city manager works at the pleasure of the council. The mayor really doesn't vote. He's like the figurehead, breaks a tie, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, these mayors that are making these unilateral decisions, how do they have the power to do that without the entire city council on board?
Well, every state's different.
Every state's different.
Every state has their own set of laws that govern how the localities can operate in the states. So, North Carolina, we have a certain set of laws, and I don't know if it's the same as Chicago. I don't know if it's the same as Oregon. I just don't know.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah. So when we talk about these different areas, we have to know what the laws are in that area and what they're.
Well, we do know what North Carolina's laws are.
Yeah, we know.
Between you and me.
Yeah.
And in North Carolina, this could not happen with the mayor deciding what to do. Somewhat similar to our governor deciding how things are going to run in this pandemic that we're all suffering from. sadly, it's upon us, and things have to be done. We all have to be, we have to manage the best we can, and we have to act as a wise people to do so. Mm-hmm. But Diane, I'm switching up here. Should our governor, who is the executive, mm-hmm. should he make rules that we must follow where he does not have the statutory authority or the constitutional authority to do so? As you well know, the Emergency Powers Act was designed for something other than a pandemic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was designed for tornadoes and hurricanes. Mm-hmm. Like tornadoes are going to happen in a matter of hours. Mm-hmm. Hurricane could take 3 or 4 days to pass through. Mm-hmm. And then there's the aftermath. And then at some point, the governor is no longer governing as per emergency powers. Right. Now, the governor now is governing unilaterally without any help from the Council of State or the General Assembly. In fact, some people will argue that he would not call the General Assembly back in session because he wanted to keep that power. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times governors will call the General Assembly back in session to get them involved. He did not do that. No. And in North Carolina, only the governor can call the General Assembly back in power. Back in power. Excuse me, call the General Assembly back into session. Mm-hmm. This has been quite unique for North Carolina because in North Carolina, it was only a few decades ago that we allowed the governor to run for 2 terms. And it was only a few decades ago that a governor had veto power. So things have changed a lot in North Carolina. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, back in like the 1998 election day was just a day. It was Tuesday. It was right, and now election day is early voting, and it's not just a week or 2. Now it's several weeks, and it's a couple Sundays. I mean, it's a very drawn out period of time. And I was going back to that decision that struck down our Voting Rights Act or Voter ID Act. Okay, and that was I want to say a couple of years ago. But it went to the Fourth Circuit, which is one that governs like West Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, those. And I was reading that decision, and it said, well, every one of these changes in the Voter ID Act affects only African Americans.
Okay? No, it affects all of us.
It affects everybody. But what I didn't really appreciate.
Constitutional, would it not?
Yeah, right. And I thought about that, and so they pointed with precision. They pointed at every one of the changes and how it just affected the African Americans. And so I'm asking myself, well, all right, so the absentee ballots or taking away a Sunday. Oh, gee, that affects African Americans. My next question is, are they entitled to that extra Sunday? Are they entitled to that, whatever they're entitled to? And it was always no. And I'm thinking back to 1998 when we we extended voting to early voting, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And it's always been extended since the initial.
Yes, but that is a General Assembly decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The governor does not make that decision. That decision is not even made by the State Board of Elections.
Right.
And one other thing the public needs to be aware of, what you're talking about with the motor voter ID is what they call it.
That's Clinton. That was Clinton.
Yes. That is a constitutional issue. That's written into the North Carolina Constitution.
And I believe that's unconstitutional.
It is?
I believe it is. Oh,
the motor voter. Yes.
Some of those provisions I think are.
That is written in the Constitution, and also the.
No, I don't think that's written in the Constitution. I think that's just
that is
an
not.
Act. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. My semantics are completely wrong here. What I meant to say, not motor voter, but ID, photo ID, is written into the Constitution. Yes.
I don't know. Our Constitution.
North Carolina Constitution.
Yeah. Well, it was supposed to be written into our
It's there.
Did you check?
I checked it.
Because I was looking for it.
Yeah.
And it was not there. So they challenged the North Carolina Constitution on 2 grounds.
Yes.
Right? It was the voter ID and the property, the tax, the personal income tax, right? And those are the two that Governor Cooper and others, but they had questions about them. Mostly it was the Democrats, but they challenged those two things, and the court, and I don't remember what court it was, but they said, that they didn't meet the requirement. They had impermissibly gerrymandered districts, and that's so the legislators did not really constitute a legitimate General Assembly, right? So they struck it down. So if you looked at the North Carolina Constitution, those two sections never made it in. So I get very frustrated with the courts. That's my bottom line. I get very frustrated with the courts. So that was I don't know what that was. But before that, I think, is when our voter ID law went to the Fourth Circuit, and so they struck down all these provisions saying that, or they addressed every one of the changes and saying it racially it targeted African Americans. Okay, and because it did that, it evidences an intent to suppress the black vote.
Which sounds like a political decision.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We're finding more and more.
Yeah.
A lot of these judges appointed by the Clintons and the Obamas are more politician than they are judges.
So, you talk to people that study politics, and for years and years that they've been studying it, is they put a plan in place. And they know what they eventually want to do. They know what 2020 has to look like. They want to know what 2020 would look like if Republicans were in power. But they do all this, and they know that they have to tear down the church. They got to tear down this. They got to do this, and they just know that these are the steps we have to put in place to get there. And they had these things in place many, 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 many years ago, but we're seeing them play out because they operate by a plan. Right, Republicans. I don't know if Republicans operate by a plan, but
no, they don't. I can speak.
But progressives do. Right, we know progressives do.
The progressives, I think, are progressive. You call them progressives. I'll call them democratic socialists. They have a plan. Their plan is to remake America into a socialist / Marxist society, exactly. And they all get on the same talking points. You can see it come down from the fake news outlets. And the talking points come down, and then all of them start using those same talking points. It goes straight through the fake news channel. I mean, like the Daily Show, stuff like that. They actually make shows out of these talking points to get all the young kids involved.
It's the Mockingbird
thing. And the truth, the reality is lost. Now, Republicans are all independent-minded people. I mean, we're like, and some of us aren't. They're the rhinos. But the rest of us are very independent-minded, and we are like herding chickens and cats. It's hard to get us all on the same page because we have our own ideas about doing things. So, and I think that's what our founders wanted, is to all our governing bodies to be deliberative bodies. People think for themselves and represent those constituents that understand them and want them to do what they do. Right.
I agree. So, for years and years, people say, you're a Republican. And I'll say, no, I think I'm more of an independent. Yeah. And it's because I don't play to the Republican platform.
No, me either. I don't even know what a Republican platform is.
But I do know.
Is there one?
I'm sure there is, right? Just that's why I don't go to state conventions anymore, is because they're so beholden to the GOP the agenda and all that stuff, and I don't play that game. I hate to say that. But,
I don't either.
But I do know what I stand for.
Company.
Yeah, but I do know what I stand for. I know that I've done all this research, and I know what I believe in, and I know what our Constitution means and says, and there's just certain things that make sense to me, and I do not believe that the protesters are out there doing any good. I think they're actually destabilizing our country, and I do not believe like a good 70% of the court rulings that are coming down, because I consider them, they're progressive. If you listen to what the progressive agenda is, these rulings are fitting that agenda. So I know where I stand, and I know what I want the country to look like and act like. That's why I'm always with the Republican Party, because that's the party that's going to get us where I believe.
At least we hope it is.
At least we hope, right? Yeah.
And then there is the fights that go on in the Republican Party, which are pretty substantial.
It's so ridiculous. I mean, politics. People say, oh, you got to run, you got to do this, you got to do that, and my answer is always no. That's not what I've meant. It's not what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to advise. I'm meant to, look at bills. I'm meant to, assess them, write about them, talk about them, and that's all. And I think that's a pretty good position. And this way, if I'm constant, people know over the years that, all right, Diane knows what she's talking about.
Let me interject right now. Since this is primarily on Beaufort County Now, publication, largest online publication in the history of Beaufort County, if you want to search Diane Rufino's name, you will find countless articles and pages of Diane's words, and they are very succinct and very well-meaning.
Succinct?
Very succinct. I mean, you explain it quite well. And we have a lot of viewers that think so. And the end result in all of your writings is to preserve the Republic for the ages.
Yeah, I mean right. This is the world's last chance to have a country that's for free people. So freedom, we have all our freedoms. Yes. We know what they are. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, you really know what they are. Mm-hmm. And that's freedom. Liberty is the extent to which you can exercise those freedoms. So we talk about, well, I work at this company. It's a private company, but they won't let us wear a cross to work. We can't wear a cross. We can't talk about politics at work. We can't do this. We can't do that. Come on, you can do that. In our earlier days when we were working, and you could do that kind of stuff, but they're just crashing down hard lately. And so what we're seeing is that
talking about the cancel culture,
counterculture,
the cancel
culture, yeah.
Which I will argue is worse than the counter culture of my day.
Yeah. So, that's where we're going. We're heading in that direction right now. So we don't really feel like we have free speech.
Yes.
And I don't answer back. I don't get into things on Facebook or social media as much as I would have, years ago, because people just get downright nasty.
Yeah. And
I don't need that. I don't need that. I made my point, and I'll respond maybe once. But if you want to take it further, because then the response after that is you're a pig, you're a this, you're a Marxist. I mean, they call me all kinds of names, and I'm thinking,
speech,
yes,
for thee, but not speech for me, but not for thee.
Yeah.
And who would have ever thought that the General Assembly would have to get involved and write a law for our university system,
right?
To allow free speech on campus?
Yeah, it makes...
That's new. That happened, in the last 4 years?
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah.
We had to have the General Assembly get involved because the General Assembly finances the university system, and they got involved to the extent they are demanding free speech on campus, and then the university system has got to work it out so that I guess the people can still have their safe spaces and the microaggressions and closets that they can go to and cry if they have to.
Yeah.
And they're now in the streets.
Yeah.
This is funny. I don't mean to be dogmatic here, but I'm looking at TV and I'm seeing, this is supposed to be about a black man that was murdered in the streets of Minneapolis. And I see white kids, doughy white kids. I mean, these kids are kind of doughy. And I think they're doughy up here too. And they're yelling and screaming about issues they don't know. And I've watched them yell at black people, that black people don't know what they're doing, that they're not on the same page as these woke white kids.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, where have we gone as a society? When I was coming along with the counterculture, I was tacitly involved. We had real racism in the South, and in America, all of America, we had racism. And we had Martin Luther King. I grew up with Martin Luther King. I remember when he was shot. I remember the riots in Detroit, and Chicago, and Watts in LA. And they were real riots, and they were nothing like the riots we have now. And that was, you could understand it then. A great man died. A great man that
and
said...
he was fighting for voting rights.
He was fighting...
Right?
And he was a Republican, by the way.
Yeah.
He was fighting for the rights of human beings to be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin.
Right.
And now we have a political party that identifies everybody as if you're black or brown or this or that, or which class of people are you? Yeah. But they never talk about Americans, real Americans.
I know. It's that's why I say when I put on the news, I get very frustrated, and it's just sad to me, and I don't recognize the country half the time, and so I just I haven't written an article maybe in the last 3 or 4 months.
And we suffer here at Beaufort County now. We don't have your writers.
No one suffers.
But you're saying a fight is not afoot, but a fight will be afoot at some point, don't you think? Mm-hmm. If it keeps going in this direction. Because there are a lot of patriots that will not go down without a fight.
But you notice the patriots are starting to wake up.
Oh, they're waking up.
Yeah, and they're starting to take to the streets, and they have these counter rallies, and I mean they're a lot more populist than the whatever the Black Lives Matter and those protests.
Which is a Marxist organization, by the way. Yeah. I mean, all these corporations that are now supporting Black Lives Matter because it's really woke and really cool to do so, and they think that will bring them more business. Black Lives Matter would, by their charter, would shut down those corporations given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe they're just putting their money, and it's almost like the mafia, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you're talking to an Italian here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but how the mafia goes into a neighborhood and they provide protection.
Yeah.
This is kind of like that same issue.
And it's almost like personal injury attorneys too.
Yes, personal injury attorneys.
They find niches to get involved in. They probably don't really belong.
They create the issue.
They create the issue and they create the niche, and then they bilk people for lots of money. And I did work as a personal injury attorney and stuff like that, but. I have a question.
Yes.
Supposedly Trump announced that Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization, right? Well, what does that mean? Does it mean anything? Because we still have Antifa around and blah, blah, blah. And they were supposed to come here during the rallies and well, what does that mean?
What it means is Trump needs 4 more years to get this all figured out.
But can you arrest them? Can you?
You should arrest them on just the statutes of that state, or the ordinances of that city, or county where they are breaking the law. Yeah. To me, damaging property, stealing property, hurting others is wrong. Case in point, what's going on in Portland right now? A big brouhaha is going down, and all the Democratic Socialists have gotten on the same page as they always parrot one another, that what Mr. Trump is doing with his so-called private army by sending in these federal agents to protect federal property. Now, this is property that you and I own. Our audience owns that property, regardless of where it is.
Taxation,
That is federal property. Now, for these mayors and these governors and these woke Democrat socialist states, they don't want to see the federal government there because they don't care if that property is destroyed. They don't care if security guards are killed. And it was either Seattle or Portland where a black security guard who has been working there for a long time was shot. Do you remember that?
I thought was that kind of a recent thing?
Yeah, it's pretty recent.
Yeah.
You might have been on hiatus at that point.
But I've been asleep for like the last full week. I never really got up.
It happened. There's people dying out there. Yeah. And these people are starting to use more and more instruments of warfare. And if you watch, it doesn't look like a peaceful protest at all. They're wearing helmets now.
There's nothing peaceful about these protests.
No.
And that's what I'm saying. I watched it the first night or the second night, and they've got the masks on, they've got and they've got.
But they had the First Amendment right to do this. If you'll suffer me just a moment, I would like to read the First Amendment, if I could. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right, and this is where it comes in, of people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is it. The last part of that. That's the entire First Amendment.
There's
First
five
Amendment
rights mentioned in the First Amendment.
Now, it's okay for these people to come together, state their case. Maybe do it multiple nights if they have to, multiple days. Do it so the media can see them. They've made their point. But when they start looting and burning, pretty much their First Amendment rights have ended. Am I right? And it is dependent upon the local authorities to make sure that they are taken care of by arrest.
And I agree with that. I agree. And, the First Amendment, people should not be hiding behind any headgear, face gear, anything that obscures their identity. Because
this pandemic is working well for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this was all planned out, at least put on paper. And when the opportunity arose, they just went with it.
It happened too quick.
Yeah, and it was perfectly organized.
When
bricks and all that. Yeah,
delivering the bricks. I mean, in pallets.
Yeah.
Not only the bricks, but the metal poles.
Everything
they need.
Everything they needed, they had shipped in. I agree.
And let's talk a minute about how this president terribly. I mean, if you listen to the fake news, he terribly went in and cleared out the protesters from a part of Lafayette Park, which is adjacent to the White House, where he lives, his family, and runs the executive branch of government, where they were throwing ice bottles of water, bricks, and they were fighting with Secret Service officers. And the president decided, well, I'm going to go to St. John's Church. And can you make it so I can get there? So they moved him out of the way. You would have thought the world had ended, that their First Amendment right to throw bottles of water and hurt police officers, which I think 38 people had to go to the hospital. I mean, not them, but the police officers had to go to the hospital, which wasn't reported in the fake news outlets. But this happened. And I think the president has a right to defend his turf.
I agree.
And if the mayor of Washington, D.C. will not do it, if she feels so inclined to send National Guard troops from other states that are staying in hotels under private contract, if she declares those contracts null and void, which you're a contract lawyer, how does she do that? I mean, it's probably no way she can do that legitimately.
Well, the first thing to look at is they're going after Trump as if he's racist. Right?
Well, of course, he is a racist.
I mean, that was the first thing.
His son-in-law is a Jew. His grandchildren are Jewish. Yeah. He has many black people working for him. On the cabinet and otherwise. And guess what? I think a lot of black folks are going to vote for Trump. And I hate to call them black folks. I like to call them Americans.
Yeah,
but,
I agree with you.
The identification process by the Democratic Socialists is that that's what they are. They're black or they're brown. And that's how their value is to the Democratic Socialist Party. Yeah. Their color.
I totally agree with that. But George Floyd, is that his name, George Floyd? What state was he killed in?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. All right. So he was killed in Minnesota, and by a police officer that they termed racist. But that's the state. That's Minnesota. Why do they assume every other state has racist police officers? And I just never understood that. And I get really frustrated when I think, wait, we have protests in Charlotte, we have protests in Raleigh. They want to come to Greenville. But why do they think North Carolina is racist? I don't understand it. The Fourth Circuit shot down our voter ID law, saying that we still have a history of terrible racism. And
it sells.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It works, Diane. It works politically for them.
It works, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what's the most important thing for them. It's not the preservation of the republic; it is the attainment of power.
Yeah.
If you like what Diane said today, and you like our interaction, Diane's coming back, right?
I'll come back whenever we can fit that in. Yeah,
absolutely. I can fit you in. Always
I just live down the street. I don't live very far.
She really does. She's about 16 miles away. I consider her a local. And if anybody wants to write in and take issue with what we talked about or celebrate what we talked about, please do. Beaufort County Now is right there, BeaufortCountyNow.com. We're here for you, and we always will be.